Couldn't tell who it was for a little while. Okay, anyway, back to so we have over 2,500 members now on our virtual Camino for Good. Today, Patrick and Justin have agreed to answer any and all of our questions. So here's what we'd like for you to do. Put your questions in the chat and also put in chat where you're from so that we know where everybody's coming from. We think that'll be fun to have that. So take a minute and jot down where you're from. We have all of you. And when your question comes up, if you have a brief comment, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. If we continue to have that issue, we won't have that ability. And then let's see. Oh, let me introduce you to Patrick and Justin. They were born about 30 hours apart, and they've been friends their entire lives. They made the movie, I'll Push You. They wrote a book called I'll Push You. And they made a children's book about friendship called The Push. So Justin and Patrick, would you start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Justin, and Pat will introduce himself in a second. But so, yeah, I mean, first off, we just want to say thank you so much for participating in this kind of I'll Push You / Camino for Good partnership that we're kind of working on, trying to raise some money, which is really awesome. And we are very, very blessed to have that be a part, have everyone pitch in and help out. It's awesome. I mean, I'm so happy with the outcome. And so, yeah, so a quick story about me. If you've watched the movie, then you kind of know about us a little bit, but we're both family men. We live in Eagle, Idaho, just outside of Boise, Idaho. And Pat and I are about, what, 2 miles apart? Somewhere around there, if that. And I'm a family man. My wife, been married almost 21 years. Her name's Kirsten. She's also in the movie. And we have 3 kids, Jaden, Noah, and Lauren. And Jaden is graduating high school this year, going into college. And Noah is a sophomore in high school. And then Lauren is in 6th grade. She's 12 years old. That's me. And I have a pug named Luca. So, yeah.
I've been married for 24 years to my wife, Donna. 24 years this year. 3 kids as well. My 16-year-old daughter's birthday is today. And then I've got a 12-year-old boy, Joshua. My 16-year-old named Cambria. Joshua is my 12-year-old boy. And then 11-year-old daughter, Olivia. And we are super excited. Like Susan said, nothing's off limits. So bring your questions if you have any curiosity, as deep, as hard, as real as you want to get. We're ready to go there. So we're just excited to be with y'all. So thank you. So I say we just dive in.
Let's dive in.
All right, I'm looking through all of where they're from. We've got Berkshire County, Massachusetts. Here's a question. What's the one item that you wish you'd had with you if you had to do it over again that you didn't take with you?
Who asked the question?
Helen from Nashville asked that one.
Hi, Helen from Nashville. Something that we should have brought with us?
We wish we had.
Wish we had.
I don't know.
I think we had exactly what we needed.
Yeah.
Earplugs go a long ways.
Yeah.
Those of you who have walked the Camino and slept in rooms with other people, earplugs are a wonderful investment. Yeah, I don't think I would have done anything different, or brought anything different. Pat, you?
No. I mean, I think we actually could have packed a little bit lighter, honestly.
Yeah.
One less shirt, one less pair of underwear, one less pair of socks. We would have been stinkier, but I mean, you think you pack light. I think everyone who's been on the Camino knows, like, you pack, you try and strip it down, and about a week and a half, and you're like, man, I have too much stuff. Feels that way often.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see where Jeff is from, but he wants to know if your son's going to the University of Oregon.
Oh, Jeff.
Oh, hey, Jeff, where are you? Jeff Conway, how you doing, man? I love you, brother. No, he's going to go to BSU. Boise State University. He just made that decision 2 days ago. So he's going to go to BSU for at least the first year, and then we'll see where he goes from there. Studying videography and cinematography and like TV media. That's where he's going to go.
Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, I know he's not going to be a duck, but thanks for asking, brother. Love
You
you.
can still support the football team.
Yeah.
So Darcy's asking, what was the greatest challenge? And then what was the greatest joy?
Greatest challenge and greatest joy. Well, okay, challenges. I mean, you can divide those up into lots of categories. You've got the physical aspect, right? And then you've got the emotional aspect. I just unplugged the computer real quick. Sorry. Physically, the Pyrenees was hands down the hardest thing. But the Meseta, emotionally and mentally, is definitely a tough thing. Something I would never skip. 150 miles of desert, or well, I guess not desert, but wheat fields, can really force some pretty powerful reflection. But yeah, I would say those are probably the two most challenging things for me. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
Your greatest joy?
The greatest joy? Oh, coming into Santiago and seeing our wives. Sure. That's no question. For me anyway. Yeah. Justin, how about you?
Yeah, I would say greatest joy I mean, nothing like coming into the square in Santiago, especially what we went through on the pilgrimage. The hardest part, I think, for me was just being away from my family.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
really missed being away from them, and it was good to see our wives and then be reunited with our kids and families when we got home. So it was really nice on that front. So simple question.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's simple answer.
Let's keep going. There was Kansas City, Missouri, somebody on here from Barcelona, Spain. And then,
Ah,
yeah, Zubin asked, what wheelchair should Zubin use because he's coming with you soon?
That must be 10 meat. Yes. Hey, how are you? What's up? The whole crew's there. Nice.
Yeah.
Hey,
So-
Patrick.
you are.
Hi,
Hey, guys.
Justin.
hey, how's it going?
Good to see you guys. So for
Yeah.
those of you who aren't aware, we do accessible Caminos, right? Trying to make the Camino as accessible as possible. We have plans to go in September, and the crew that's going to be coming with Zubin are planning on joining us in September. And
Yep.
am I saying that name right? Is it Zubin?
Zubin.
Zubin. I'm
Zubin.
sorry. Yeah.
Can you say hi?
Well-
Hi.
Hey, buddy. I'm gonna let Justin answer this because he's the authority on the wheelchairs. So, what wheelchairs does Zubin have to join us on the accessible Camino, Justin?
Well, this is a much longer conversation, but in a nutshell, we try to use with what you have. So if you have a manual chair, then we'll try to work with that. Are you in a power chair right now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So a manual wheelchair, well, you'll definitely need that. And then there's some options you have. There's called a grit wheelchair. And then there's another one that if you have a manual, like you can get what's called a free wheel, which is an adaptation you put on the front of a wheelchair. But that's a very, very quick answer for you.
Yeah.
But happy to hop
Okay.
on another
We'll
call
talk
with the
to you
two of
about it
you and
later.
talk in
We'll
details.
get
Yes.
specifics from.
He's just
Yeah.
too excited.
We'll
Awesome.
get it figured out.
We got you, man. We got you.
Yes.
The next question is from Tanya. What was it that kept you going when it was very tough, especially at the beginning?
Oh, kept us going. Well, I know. I know how Justin's wired, and he's probably thinking some of the same things actually. But we had a lot of naysayers. A lot of people told us at the beginning that it couldn't be done. We were stupid. There's no way. And we're both pretty stubborn individuals, pretty driven for the most part. So when we make our minds up to do something, we're gonna do it. But when someone tells us that we can't, we'll come hell high or high water. We're gonna prove them wrong. So I know there was a certain amount of that, like just fuel. Like no. You can tell me I can't do something. You can tell me I'm crazy. I'm gonna make you eat your words. So that was definitely some initial fuel, especially climbing the Pyrenees. But that fuel definitely ran out relatively quickly because it was super challenging. And I got to be honest with you, one, a prayer, just support with one another, just constantly encouraging one another. And ultimately, I'm not sure I can pinpoint the one thing that kept us going. There was just this borderline supernatural drive to keep moving every single day. And it worked.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
my
even
answer.
even though, I mean, Pat's right. I mean, even the morning we left St. Jean, we were having coffee, and I'll never forget this, where, you know, our server lady, she was really nice, and she was asking, she's like, "What are you guys doing?" And I'm in my wheelchair, I like gear on, and she said, "What are you guys doing?" So we're heading out on the Camino today. She says, "No, you're not." Says, "Yeah, we are." And she was in complete disbelief. She was like, "No, you're not going to go, and you know, you're not gonna make it." And well, I kind of want to go back there and just say, "Yeah, we did." But I think that was kind of like one of the last fires that we had underneath us. Even while we were on the pilgrimage, we had people, you know, Pamplona to, we're in Leon. We even had somebody say, "Where'd you guys start?" We said, "With St. Jean," and they didn't believe us. I said, no, we did. And yeah, it was quite comical. But yeah, that fire, somebody tells you not to do something, we're going to try.
Thank you.
You bet.
Paul wants to know, how often did you stay in regular albergues? Because the movie showed mostly the hotels.
Right. Well, accessibility is a challenge, as you can imagine. But beyond that, the real challenge for us was preserving my back. So I can't get Justin a second bunk, obviously. And so when you have bunk beds, they're typically incredibly low. So I could get Justin into the bed, but getting him out was really challenging. So unless albergues had a single bed, which not all of them had, they were pretty tough. And so we stayed in several right out of the gates, and then we had to kind of bounce back and forth just to give my back a break. But so many of them were so great. I mean, some of our best meals were the Camino meals at an albergue. And so I'm trying to remember, I think we stayed in 8 albergues. It was 8. A handful of hotels, people's apartments. We met people like in
Yeah.
Australia, right? We just met
Australia.
people.
Yeah. Stella.
We're leaving town for the weekend. You want to stay in our apartment? We're like, who are you? What? Sure. Pensions, you know, you name it. So it was a hodgepodge of stuff. And we were prepared to camp too, just in case. We had our sleeping bags and little, equipment to camp if need be. But fortunately, that was never an issue because getting Justin off the ground is really hard.
Not fun. No. Yeah, it's all about, for us, it was all about conserving energy as much as we could, because we weren't like the average, you know, pilgrim that we met. So we had to conserve. So every day was a choice.
Yeah. Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, the movie kind of paints the picture, but it's I mean, my day was really long, but Justin's day is longer than normal as well, just because we got to get ready. We got to make sure he's dialed in, that his backside is okay, that, you know, take care of my feet, all these kind of things that we had to make sure we're ready to rock and roll. And so in addition to the mileage each day, I mean, I was up at often 5:30 or 6. I wouldn't be in bed till 11 at night. And Justin was up not long after me. And there were days that he was in the bed not long before me. And so that rest component was really, really important, really important. So, yes.
Cian from Vancouver is asking, I might not be saying his name right, but tell us more about the chair you used. Did you design it yourself?
No. So the chair that I used for my pilgrimage, and I still use it. So we've done it. We did the last 100K in late 19 as well. So I've used it twice now on that. It was made by a company called a small outfitter called offroadchairs.com. And it's kind of a cool story. I mean, well, let's just first say, when we were first looking for wheelchairs, there's not, as you can imagine, there's not a ton of options in the off-road wheelchair market at that time. So there was a few different options, and I found this one, and it was made by these two, actually it was two best friends out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And one guy had a spinal cord injury, and the other guy was an engineer, and they designed the chair, and they'd used it. It was originally intended for, just like going on day hikes, those kind of things. And so when I showed Patrick the chair and reached out to them and said, hey, this is what we're going to be doing with it, and want to have one made. It took about 5 months for them to make it, but it's a great chair, very well designed. I mean, except for the wheel breaking off on day 2, because we didn't, we put it through things that wasn't really meant for it to handle, but we had it welded, and that's like rock solid now. It's a great chair. So
Justin,
I had some input to it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This is Sean, the lady in Vancouver. Was it the Trail Rider?
No.
Do you know the name of the
It's-
guys in Vancouver?
They no longer make it. They're no longer doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Brian, and I don't remember his buddy's name.
We could probably go
Off-road
back.
chairs.
Because
Yeah.
I was actually involved in the original design of what you were in like 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah. Maybe I can talk to you guys offline another time, but thanks for
That'd be
answering
awesome.
that question.
yeah. Happy to. It's a great chair. I love it.
Yeah.
Our next question is Amy asked, we know what toll the Camino took on Patrick, but what did it do to Justin to ride that long? Bruises, sores?
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of it's kind of funny because we do get this question from time to time, and people have the misconception that I'm just kind of along for a joyride, and I'm sipping margaritas and yelling at Pat, put your back into it, but in reality, it's when I'm in my chair, whoever is pushing me. So, but Pat, let's just use me and him as an example. We're a unit. So it's a 3-wheel device. So it has a smaller front wheel. Well, a trail or a road or wherever we're on, it undulates, right? So it goes left and right and up and down and bumps. And so I'm constantly leaning. So I counter so I'm constantly like this in my chair, leaning, guiding, telling, whoever's pushing me, go left or right or whatever to try to avoid obstacles or whatever we need to go over. And so there's kind of like this bond, whoever's pushing me, kind of like Avatar, like where he hops on a dragon or whatever that is. And, there's that kind of bond that happens, but it does take a toll on me because I'm just being bumped and thrashed all day long. And by the end of the day, I'm wiped. I can feel everything from head to toe. So I feel it, but it does take a beating. It takes a beating on me, but it's awesome though. I couldn't do it forever, but it's something that I totally enjoy doing.
On that
Well,
same line, because I
yeah.
asked the question, is it, Patrick sent us a preparation. Do you physically do anything more stretching before you start, Justin?
Me particularly, no, I don't. I kind of stretch while I'm on the trail every day. So if I'm sitting, I'll kind of lean forward and kind of stretch my back or whatever. Sometimes I'll need to get out if I need to. If it's a long day, I'll need to get out of the chair and just kind of throw me down the ground or something so I can stretch out. But me particularly, no, I don't.
Okay,
I don't need
thanks.
to. So,
I would
you bet,
say-
Amy. I love you.
Love you.
Just to add to that, Justin, both the Camino, for the whole trek from St. Jean and then the accessible Camino, we could go out and we train before because I'm trying to get my body back in the pushing condition. It's just different, pushing a chair than it is when you're training just to get in shape. And so I would think, Justin, maybe it's just because it's automatic, but I mean, we're dealing with sidewalks and road and trail and popping things up and down, and you start to adjust again. And so even though it's almost automatic, because we did it so much. I'm guessing you're probably getting into a certain level of like core strength. those
Yeah.
weeks before, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a mini ab workout.
Yeah, mini ab workout.
Um,
Yeah. He got put through the ringer. Like it was it was rough. It was rough for sure. Yeah.
Next question is from Jen and Andre. What was the most delicious thing you ate?
Oh, I got this one.
Go for it.
Day before we finished, we were invited in Abrea, and there used to be a pension there, and they had reached out to us before we left, and said, hey, if you guys are coming through, we'd love to host you. And it was an English couple, and they were chefs, and I think, right, weren't they owned a restaurant in southern Spain, and then they relocated up to just outside of Santiago. And they invited us to stay at their house, and they made us a traditional English meat dinner. And it was amazing. It was so good. Oh man, like carrots and chicken, and oh my gosh. I love the Camino food at the beginning, but after a while, tortillas and bread just gets really old. So I love that meal. That was a good one. For me, it was a highlight. Yeah.
I would agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The next question is from Jeff. Talk more about what happened on Osobrero.
Oh, geez. That's a loaded question, Jeff. You want to take this one? You want me to, Jay?
Go for it.
All right. So you all saw Osobrero, in the film. But kind of a little more context is that when we were in Burgos, weeks prior, we ran into the two gentlemen that you see kind of out front, kind of pushing and pulling at the very beginning of the climb of Osobrero, Joe and Richard. We were actually checking out the cathedral, just, checking out the architecture, trying to be nice and quiet and respectful of this, reverent place. And then we hear this loud voice shout across the cathedral, hey, aren't you Justin and Patrick? And we're like, yeah, like we're in a cathedral, man. Tone it down. But these two guys, Joe and Richard, they were from our hometown. They're from Boise, Idaho. And so they asked if we needed help. We said, yes, of course we need help. We were figuring they were talking about the next day, but they said, no. Like where's the place that we can be most impactful? And we said, well, for sure. And so we had the idea that we were going to meet them at the base of the mountain. What we didn't know is that as they were sitting there and other pilgrims were walking by asking, hey, what are you guys doing? You're just sitting and waiting at this cafe. And they said, well, we're waiting for Justin and Patrick. Justin's in a wheelchair. We're going to help get him up Osobrero. And one by one, people stopped and just waited. Some of these people they knew beforehand. Some of these people they had never met. And so by the time we get to Osobrero, there's 12 people that are waiting to haul us up the mountain. And so, I mean, if it had just been Joe, Richard, and myself, there's no way. There was no way we could have done it. We saw in the film, we carried Justin probably close to halfway up that trail because it was impossible otherwise.
Yeah.
And to be a part of this, like this human symphony, as we describe it, of people coming together to do what we couldn't do on our own, was just one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. To just see so many people willingly pour out blood, sweat, and tears for these two idiots you're talking to right now.
Yeah.
So,
and we picked up people along the trail too. So we come up on us, and they just, without even asking, they just jump in. I mean, they would ask, they would just say, hey, can I help? So yeah, jump on in. And they just jumped on in, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like amazing. That's the Camino really in a nutshell. So
yeah, I have a follow-up on that. Like, I feel like in the movie I saw like Patrick is like feeling he has the responsibility of taking Justin, right? But like getting that help from people, like how did you deal with like inside, like letting go of, okay, I can't do this alone, and we are like, as you said,
Sure.
community here.
mm-hmm.
Well, you're digging into a pretty powerful moment, honestly. Is it MJ? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, MJ. you get into the details of this in the book. I'll push you because I mean, in the film, you're trying to keep it, you know, you let the story flow, but you can't get into every single aspect, right? And there's so many stuff that happens. We had like 600 hours of footage that we had to distill down to, you know, a 90-minute film. And so, but what you're digging into really, MJ, is that I had a pretty significant shift in my mindset, and I talk about it a little bit in the film, but I had gone from come from a very challenging, taxing job as a administrator in healthcare, and I had kind of allowed my job to consume me because I'm a type A driven, like I got to get it done kind of personality, and I'm not historically one who accepts help real well. I'll give it, but I don't tend to let people into that space because for me, it doesn't feel safe because I like to control everything. If I can wrap my arms around it, I feel safe, right? But Osurero was kind of the final blow to that mentality that just kind of shattered that paradigm I was living in. Because I couldn't get Justin up the hill like that. I wouldn't be able to get into Santiago, you know. And it was where like you'll see one moment in the film where we're coming up almost to the top of Osurero. I don't have a backpack. I don't have a water bag. I don't have a stick. Like I am completely burden free. I'm not pushing the chair. I'm not carrying it. I'm just walking. And that was because all these pilgrims just, it's like, no, like we're going to carry this for you. And that was, it was humbling, but it was exactly what I needed because without that moment on Osobro and the moments that leading up to it, but without that experience on Osobro, I don't know that my family would be fully intact right now because I was so obsessed with work. I was so obsessed with doing a good job at my job itself that I had neglected my wife and kids significantly. And it was a wake-up call. It was a huge wake-up call that if I'm gonna live my life well, I have to let other people into my story constantly, not just once in a while. And Osobro forced that mindset to come into play.
Wow.
Thank you. That was so powerful. I actually reading the question if like I saw the movie, but I haven't read a book. And my question was like what I could get in the book that I couldn't get from the movie. I think you just answered that.
A lot.
Yeah, the book is not a regurgitation of the movie. If those of you have read it, it's a great sister piece and digs much deeper into, you know, details of our lives and challenges of our lives. And you read our book and you really know who we are. Take it for what it is, I guess. But yeah, it was really, for me, it was a beautiful thing to see it unfold in front of me because I knew he needed it. But you can't force that upon somebody. They have to experience the light bulb. And, you know, I love Pat like a brother. So of course I want him to succeed. I want him to grow. And I'm glad things happened the way they did because he's 180 degrees different, still same Pat, but different lens of how he looks at life and views life and lives life is sweeter and richer and has made me grow. So
thank you. I'm excited to read the book now.
yeah.
And the next question is from Dan, and he says, I'm in my 8th decade and don't think I could push a wheelchair through mud. Is there some other way I could help on one of your trips? Tell us about volunteering for your trips.
Well, I'll say first off, we desperately try and avoid mud.
Yeah.
I mean, we try and travel either June or September because there's fairly light rain months without being too warm. Here's what I'll say to that. We'll get into the volunteering in a minute, but in 2019, when we took this this last group, we had a gentleman by the name of Ron Henry join us, and Ron was 83.
He's 83. Yeah.
84.
Yeah, no.
I mean, there's lots of sections that are flat, right? You'd be surprised at who can push a chair on a flat trail. And what that does is it gives someone else who might be pushing, uphill or going down a slow hill and you're trying to be an anchor, reprieve. And so we try and have a 5-to-1 ratio of helpers to those that need assistance. So we have a constant ebb and flow of those that can step in and give assistance, but then back out, because if you're trying to do it day in and day out for 6-7 days straight, you're someone's going to get hurt. We want this to be an enjoyable experience, right? Not just completely, so physically taxing that you don't have time to breathe and actually take in the Camino. So we try and build that in with the teams we create. And so helpers push, pull, lift, grab drinks, help feed people that need assistance there. But, we're going uphill. It's all hands on deck. But when we're on the flats, you kind of pop in and out, and you get to meet all these different people from all walks of life that are showing up for different reasons, with the same motivation of helping someone realize this dream of doing the Camino in a wheelchair. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see, just instead the light bulb go off for me, you see light bulbs go off for other people, both the pushers and the ones that are being pushed, as they just get to experience humanity and relationship in a deeper and new way. So I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah.
Thanks,
any suggestions about special things about how to train? Anything different than what I would normally do to get ready
to help us out, or just in general?
Well, I guess you were talking about how maybe pushing a chair uses some muscles that you're not used to using. And so I'm just wondering if you were helping somebody train to do this, if you had any special suggestions.
If you can push a chair, it's great. It really is. What I would say that's fantastic is sled work.
Hold on. Hey, Pat, if I may. So Dan, if you are part of one of our groups, it's just, if you're curious, you just go to accessiblecamino.com and you can get on our wait list. We interview everybody. And if you are selected for the group based on the interview, we have a course that we put together it's called 0 to 20K a day that Patrick created, that goes through training regimens and how to prepare your body for pushing and pulling and that. So that's a quick way of answering that. So yeah, there's all of the stuff that Pat is about to say is in that mini course. So kind of gives people training and helping. So that's part of that. So we don't just leave you in a lurch, be like, good luck. It's like we try to give people enough information, and Pat's really good on giving pushers, what we call them, the right information on how to prepare so you don't injure yourself, because we don't want you to be injured. So that's kind of how that works. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's helpful.
You bet, man.
The next one is from Lois, and she says, I believe the average miles per day walking the Camino is around 15, and you average the same. With the additional challenges for you, how did you make it in only 35 days?
Well, we actually did more than 15 a day because we rested. I trained for a year. I mean, I literally trained for 12 months for this, because it was going to be something totally different than just the hiking the 500 miles. And so I think that paid off really in spades, because I mean, it was Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, every morning, every night. I was either in the gym or on my bike for about an hour at a time, so 2 hours a day. And then I'd go out hiking, just to get my feet conditioned, so that impact to strengthen my bones and my knees and my ankles, so I wouldn't get shin splints or stress fractures in my feet from pushing the chair. And then after 9 months of that, Justin's chair showed up, and we just went out and we're in the hills constantly, just getting used to the abuse I was going to put my body through. And so while, I mean, on average, we were about 17, 18 miles a day. But to give you a kind of a clear picture, is that when you're on a flat with that wheelchair, when you start pushing, there's a synergy with your body where you will actually walk faster than you would without it. And people give me a hard time, like, slow down. I'm like, it's more work to slow down, because you just get kind of going, and you would have people jump in and help out. Like, whoa, this is actually, I mean, while it's still work, it kind of pulls you down the trail. So we had some days we would do 25 miles. And so you just go as long as you felt good, and we made it.
Wow.
Yeah, I see a question from Yvonne that popped up real quick. It's 15 miles a day, not 15K a day. So what is that? 23K, 22, 23K, somewhere around there.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
So, Sam from Vancouver wants to know, would you consider organizing a group of people with disabilities to do this with you again?
So yeah, I mean, that's what we did in 2019. So to be clear, we take, as part of what we do, we take people with limited mobility, different kinds of disabilities on the Camino, the last 100 kilometers. So we've done the French way. We've now had to bump our groups twice now because of COVID, which is a pain in the butt, but we're going to get back, and we are dedicated to make it happen for those who may not have the opportunity to do it. And so if somebody is interested, I think somebody already put in the chat, it's just go to accessiblecamino.com. And it's when we have the groups announced, you'll be put on a wait list, and then you can get all the details of what's included with that, what's the price and itinerary and all the days and everything. And then we personally interview everyone, so that we want to make sure everyone's a good fit, and that they're getting them, they know what they're getting themselves into, as well as, we need to make sure that we're getting the right alchemy of group put together. So that's, it's awesome. I think we're a little stubborn in that idea because we had, when we came back from our first one, the I'll Push You the 800K, we had, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 people reach out to us over the course of, months or a year or so, and just say, hey, how do you do the Camino in a wheelchair? And we would just spend time answering those questions. And we finally got to the point of, maybe we should do something about this. So a little thick-headed, I guess, in some ways, but it took 1.5 years to plan our first one, 6 months to plan it, 1.5 years to finally go. And then now we're kind of waiting in wings to do it again. And we're ready to go back. It's going to be awesome.
Chris is asking, do you keep in touch with any of the pilgrims you met along the way?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we did.
It depends how much interaction there is, but Facebook is great. Email is great. Texts are great. So we hear from Christy fairly frequently. She just got married. Joe got married about 1.5 years ago. Rich is in New York now. Can't remember what he's doing. He was in chef school, and then he dropped out to do something else. Can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But I mean, John, who's down in San Diego, we hear from him.
Claudia.
Claudia. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
From time to time. It's pretty cool.
I mean, it's not every day by any means, but yeah, from time to time.
Sue's asking, can you talk more about the wheelchair design? Would you alter it?
Yeah. I mean, I think overall it's a pretty solidly designed chair comparatively to, some of the other ones that are on the market nowadays. There's, still some really great ones that are on the market for sure. But the way that it was designed in the first place was pretty solid. So I'd say for me, it's really, that is a kind of a loaded question, because that's going to really depend on the person and their specific needs. So for me, I could use probably a little bit more back and neck support, a few little kind of nuances and those kind of things. From a mechanical standpoint, it's awesome. You just got to keep up on it and make sure that it's maintained and cleaned, and just like a bike, you have to make sure it's good. But I don't know, Pat, you're the one who has to kind of deal with putting it together and handlebars up and down and all that. Anything you've got to change?
It's pretty well designed. The only thing that I would like to see with that is that the back would fold down. It's just for when you travel on a plane, that kind of thing. But the downside of that then is that it's not as rigid, and it's one more potential trouble point. So I without having had one that folds down, I'm not sure I can answer that 100%. But I mean, you have pins, in a a back that pops up, and even those wiggle a little bit, it might be a little uncomfortable for Justin as we're going over rocks and, you know, rough terrain. To have that back vibrating a little bit might be not worth that back being able to lie down. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of thing where wheels pop off so easily, and you can, you know, just turn on its side and slide it into the hole of the
Yeah.
plane. That it really was pretty slick.
It's fairly light. I mean, it's only
That's
20
25 pounds.
pounds.
Yeah.
Wow, good. Marsha's asking what happens next with the movie I'll Push You. She says, I'd like to see my grandson. I would like my grandson to see it, as his dad was in a wheelchair with a gear head and ran the chair around a motocross course. So what happens next with the movie I'll Push You?
Well, I mean, you can go to illpushyou.com and you can watch it now if you want. We're currently reworking our DVD printing and manufacturing, the way that we deliver that on a global scale. So we're kind of just doing virtual screenings of it right now. So yeah, I mean, that's the easy. You can go to Amazon and purchase it, or iTunes, or YouTube and buy it and rent it. So there's lots of ways you can access it fairly easily. We have some other partnerships that we're working on, just like what we did with you guys at Camino for Good, that we're kind of looking at for the later end of the year in a completely different market. So it's not Camino related. So it's we got some things coming up with it. We'll see where it goes. So.
And then Barbara says, I was particularly impressed with how you problem solved along the way related to accessibility. What helped you prepare for that process?
You mean lack of accessibility? Well, I think having a creative mind helps. You know, Patrick and I kind of talking through situations and figuring out what, just kind of trying to think outside the box and how to navigate the challenges that were in front of us. The movie only shows a small snippet of what we went through every single day. And I'm kind of glad it was that way. I mean, I'm glad they didn't gloss, the filmmakers we partnered with didn't gloss over that, because it is a very critical piece of, you know, when you live life in a wheelchair like I do, the world is different, and I just can't go climb 20 stairs and go into a building. It you just have to kind of navigate life in a different way and look at life in a different way. And so I think part of it is, I mean, I have a creative brain, so that helps, but also just kind of Pat and I looking at each other going, okay, how do we get through this? And how do we do it in a safe way so I don't get hurt, so Patrick doesn't get hurt. I mean, there's one time we sat at a bathroom door for like 15 minutes trying to figure out how to get me in there, on the toilet, showered, and out. It's kind of, we ruined a lot of office chairs. So sorry, people along the Camino, we ruined some of your chairs. But you know, you just make do with what we have. Once you leave the United States borders, accessibility goes kind of out the door. So, or it's pretty much non-existent or little, depending on where you're at in the country or in the world. But you just got to think creatively and figure your way through it. So that's how you do it.
Yep.
Well, Ben's asking about how you accept volunteers. Would you go over that process of how you get volunteers to help you with your events?
You just got to sign up. You go to accessiblecamino.com, and then we do an application process and we interview everybody. So that's really the only entry point. We have to maintain a very clear and clean funnel. Otherwise, we have people from all over, and it's just too hard to track. So that's the avenue. You go there, you get on a wait list, and then we'll announce when those Caminos are going to be open for people to sign up, and the interview process goes from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one is Mike from Canada, Ucoca, Canada. I'm sure I ruined that word, but Mike. So, hey guys, thank you for sharing your experience. We did the Camino Francés in 2017 with my wife, son, and daughter. Such a blessed time. Did you feel pressure to complete the Camino in a certain time frame? Or were you able to let go of that North American rat race mentality We did feel it because we had to return to work, and we regret that.
Initially, yeah, there was definitely pressure because I had 6 weeks off. That was it. So I had to get back in a certain time frame. But by the time I actually see Ginther's question 2 down about
Mhm.
Osabrero being kind of a turning point, and we kind of referenced this a little bit earlier. By the time we got to the Meseta, I was slowing down, and I was already thinking that my life is going to look a lot different when we got back. And then of course in Osabrero, it was a completely different just headspace, and so that rat race really went away. Honestly, I didn't really care at that point, and as evidenced by what we do now, I left that job. My boss at the time, Ed, who you saw in the movie, he actually knew I was going to quit my job before I did. He knew that when I came back from Spain, I wouldn't come back for very long. I just didn't know it yet. So he saw something, Justin saw something that I just wasn't aware of yet. But yeah, we were definitely able to kind of let it go. And I think a large part of that I give to kind of credit to Justin, because he had been self-employed for so long as a graphic designer that just kind of the ability to let go of that corporate America driven mentality he'd already done years ago. And so he just kind of this quiet voice in my back of my head, or in conversations, like, hey, we can slow down, it's going to be okay. And I finally got there about 2/3 the way through the trip.
Yeah.
Do you see Jeff's comment about he thought he got his chair for September from Hoyt Running Chairs in Massachusetts? Just a comment on where he got his.
That's another great option.
Green and gold, baby.
Yeah.
He's an Oregon Duck. So
Yeah.
Jeff's coming with us this fall. So love you, man.
Sharon
Yeah,
says, does it feel like a long time ago now that you did the first Camino in the movie? Or does it still feel as exciting that you accomplished it?
I'm still dumbfounded that we actually made it. Every time I watch the movie, it's a wonderful blessing because I get to relive it again. We have other footage and other things that we have access to that we get to see, which is kind of cool. But it's just like it was yesterday, and it's something that for me has stuck with me, and it's forever changed my life. So how can you forget that? So at least for me, I just feel blessed that we set out to do something and we accomplished that. I remember very clearly coming into the square in Santiago thinking, how much do I sell myself short of, you get in the way of yourself of accomplishing things because you start inserting things like fear and am I worthy enough, or am I good enough, or somebody said something that I shouldn't do it, so I don't. It's sometimes you just have to listen to that voice inside you and trust it and say, you're not going to have it figured out, but let's do it. And I'm so glad that we did. So I feel blessed. It's led me here with you all today. So how cool is that?
Yeah, it's led to motivate us and inspire us. So Donna wants to know when you're going back, will you do a different Camino? Will you do a different route?
We'll just stick with the accessible Caminos that we're doing now, but we do have plans to do the Portuguese route in June, so starting in Vigo. So we'll do Sarria to Santiago and Vigo to Santiago, but we don't have plans right now to do anything longer than that.
Yeah, and that's in 2022, by the way, not this June. So a year from now.
A year from now, yeah.
Marsha asked, what did you consider your biggest miracle on your trip? She said, was it the man who fixed your wheel on the chair?
That's one of them. When you have a broken wheel in the middle of nowhere and you have no idea how to fix it, it kind of takes some miracles kind of lining up in order for that to happen. And being at the right place at the right time. I mean, the quick story with that one, if you've read the book, I think you'll understand this a little bit more, but you don't really talk, it doesn't cover it very well in the movie. when my wheel broke off, and Pat, you can maybe chime in after this if you have something, but the wheel broke off when we're trying to figure out how to get it welded. Well, trying to find an aluminum welder in a foreign country is not an easy task by any means. So we make our way to Pamplona, and we end up in a bicycle shop. We thinking because, well, in Spain, there's a lot of cyclists. So bikes are made out of aluminum. So maybe they know of somebody. Then they didn't know of anybody. Right next door to that was a medical supply store with wheelchairs and commode chairs and medical things that you can get. And so we go in there, and their first response was, no, we don't know anybody. But right after maybe a few minutes, once we were in the store, the boyfriend of the girl that was running the counter comes in and asks us what we're doing. And turns out he's a welder, but he's not an aluminum welder. He's like a steel welder with a different type of technique. So then he calls one of his buddies who might know how to fix it. He comes down maybe 20, 30 minutes later, and he looks at it and says, no, I can't do it, but I know a guy. And it just kind of went down the chain. And then before we knew it, Patrick was loading up the chair with our one of our production assistants. His name's Robin, who's speaks fluent Spanish. And they went to a fabrication shop on the outskirts of Pamplona, and it was kind of a Hail Mary type thing. Just, hey, can you fix this? And the guy said, yeah, come back tomorrow. Let me see if I can work on it. And came back the next morning, and it was fixed. And it was like, he really fixed it. I mean, really good job. So it's rock solid to this day, but it's just those kind of things where you sometimes have to throw yourself into the caution of the wind and see where that wind takes you. And in this case, that was a little miracle that happened for us, and off we went. But there was many of those situations that happened along the way.
If I may interject here, I just see MJ's question about book versus film. We kind of talked about it earlier, but I'm going to piggyback on Justin's thing here about the bikes and our conversation earlier about how hard it was on Justin. This story happens to be in the book. There's so many stories in the book that are in the film, but when we have 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row on the trail and Justin's backside is just killing him, we would hop off, sections, y'all know they've been on there. There's sections where there might be a road, a feeder road that parallels the trail. And so there are a few times just to give his backside a break, pop over and be trucking along. And it was hell on my feet because it's just, asphalt's rough on feet, but to give Justin a break, one day we do this, and before we know it, there's no way to get back into the trail, and all these bikes start passing us. They're hauling. What in the world? And then pretty soon I see a bike go by, and it's like, it's the same bike. It's the same guy. We're in a bike race. This is an actual bike race. And they start yelling, "Buen Camino" and Ultrea as they pass us. And it's the same guys over and gals over and over and over. There's probably, 70 or 80 people are racing.
Yeah. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah.
And so by the time we get to the end of this section, we see okay, we can get back over to the trail finally, there's all these tents at the top of this hill. And so it's Justin, Ted, and I, we get to the top of this hill, and the volunteers that are helping the cyclists out are giving us water and bananas and little gel packs for energy. And we were cheered in like we were these racers in this bike race. It was such a random, bizarre experience. But what I would say about that, thinking about the miracle thing, it just gave us this huge appreciation for just the randomness yet beauty that is the Camino. If you've been on that, there's been so many things that you can point back to, how did that happen? How did I meet that person? How did I wind up there? And that's the book. That's the book. So if you're interested in those kind of stories, there's quite a few of those.
Well, we're going to have one more question, and then we'll stop for our hour. But so Bill from California asked, would you ever consider doing it a different way? Say carried in a sling by 2 people as opposed to a chair?
No, that would be much harder. I think, I had to be carried over sections and those kind of things, but, the way that we did it is the way that we did it. I don't think we could have, we considered at one, if my wheelchair wasn't going to make it, just rent a donkey and throw me on the back of a donkey, because you can do it by donkey, right? Or horse. So, but then we started thinking about that and we're like, well, wait a minute, I can't hold on to something. So you have to tie my hands and my feet together around the donkey to keep me on the donkey. But then I'm foreseeing hitting a bump and then I go underneath the belly of the donkey, but I'm tied to, it just would have gone south, I think. So luckily, but yeah, I don't think doing it any other method would have been ideal. I think the way we did it was the best way we could have done it, in my opinion. Yeah.
You guys said you've answered but there are 59 new messages below that I didn't get to. So we always promise that we're going to end on time. We're going to end in an hour. But Patrick and Justin agreed earlier today that if you want to stay on, they'll stay on for a little while longer, probably not for 60 new messages. I bet we're getting a lot of I've got to go, but it was a great thank you so much. And so we're going to kind of go through these and see if there's any more big ones that we haven't touched on. And so, but if you have to go, we want you to know that we're so glad you came today, and please
Yes,
stay
thank
in
you.
touch. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a weekly newsletter, and during our March to Santiago, we have a spiritual hope and healing newsletter every week. So stay in touch with us. Reach out to us and let us know where you are and what you're doing, and let us know if we can feature you in our newsletter. So thank you so much for coming. And if you have to go now, we understand. If you want to stay, that's great.
Cool.
So,
bye, everybody who needs to leave. Thank you.
So let's see what we have down here. What was the hardest thing and the most rewarding thing? Have you answered that one yet?
The hardest thing and the most rewarding thing. We have not. I'm trying to catch up to you, see where we are here. There we are. And Katie.
Well, we've kind of answered that with, blessing versus, in a way we did. But if you have something to add, Pat.
And no, I'm just to reiterate, the hardest thing, physically was definitely the Pyrenees, and then the Meseta for me, and being away from Justin's family for him, for sure.
Yeah.
I see Amy's got a question there. Did either one of you get sick in the stomach? I actually had bad water. I got bad water one day. And it was not good. We only made about 11 miles, found a place to stop. I threw Justin in bed and I was out.
You were out for the count, man. Yep.
Next day I woke up feeling great, and we did 25 miles the next morning. So
wow.
Yeah.
Amy's got another one here. Do you believe when the COVID limitations are lifted, you'll return? Will you have as many speaking opportunities that you've had? And
Hope
then
so.
what is the number of engagements you've had in a month, and what's the furthest you've had to travel to speak? So talk a little bit about your speaking career, if you would.
Yeah. So when we came back from our pilgrimage, we didn't set out for that at all. It was just kind of people started reaching out locally and saying, hey, you guys went to this thing. Well, we had some media attention, which was really cool, but on some talk shows. But people are saying, hey, come and share what you guys went through at our school or church or organization or whatever. So we just started doing that. And then we started getting asked to go speak at, local, I think our first actual speaking event legit was for Pat's work, for his job, is St. Luke's healthcare system. And we were horrible. It's just, we're still not the best speakers in the world, but we were really bad. I mean, you just start off, you just know you're not going to be great. So, but that just kind of led into one thing to the next, and word kind of started growing, and it's a lot of hard work. So it's been really cool to have the opportunity to share and meet with lots and lots and lots of people from around the country as well as internationally. So the farthest we've been is Dublin right now. We did an event for Google there. So now we have corporate level clients and those kind of things. And so that was going into 2020, we had a awesome, year lined up. We're doing Caminos in June. Had speaking events, some really great ones. And that all got sidelined. And so we've had to kind of reshuffle and refigure that out. But right now ever since March of last year, we've been doing virtual events. So we've been doing pre-recorded talks. I started doing like small Zoom chats with leadership teams, those kind of things. And then now we do like pre-recorded talks. So Patrick and I actually go to a place locally and set up cameras and shoot it and pre-record it, edit it together and deliver that. So they play that for their virtual event. And it's cool. It's really great. It's an awesome way for us to continue what we're doing. It's not the same as being in person and being with people, which we really love, just interacting with people. So kind of moving forward, I think it's going to take a little bit for that industry to rebound entirely. We're starting to get inquiries for this fall, next year. I think it's going to be a hybrid situation for a little while in my gut feeling with that one. So may have some speaking events, but it's not going to be the, 3,000 to 10,000 people events, at least for the time being. My guess is 2023. So yeah.
Asking what is the Facebook page for I'll Push You?
Just at I'll Push You. Yeah, at ILPUSHYLU. That's for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three.
And
Yeah.
the Camino for Good one, Sue, is Camino for Good Cafe. Okay. I missed one up here that I think is really good. Let me see if I can go back and find it. I saw that one. Oh, I hate to hold everybody up while I'm looking for it.
Come on, Susan.
I know it. Okay, so Jay asked this question. What is the greatest impact that you hope sharing your story will make? Because as I look at it, there are a lot of things you're making an impact on. For instance, accessibility. You show us in the movie what we need to be doing. So now let you answer the question. What is the greatest impact you hope?
Yeah, the accessibility awareness is definitely something that's kind of naturally kind of come out of it, but that hasn't been kind of the flag in the ground that we planted. For us, when we first came back, we had to have like, okay, what are we going to be about? With books, with speaking, that kind of thing. And we've come back to this conversation numerous times, but we always wind up at the same conclusion, is that we're about better relationships and how those can impact every aspect of your life, whether it's familial, work life, you name it. That relationships are the most, they should be the most valuable possession that we have, but we don't always treat them that way. But when we can engage in relationships the way you kind of engage with people on the Camino, where you're fully present, you are just, you're fully ready to share life with one another, and you allow your stories to kind of become one, at least for a moment, sometimes for days, sometimes for a lifetime. That depth of relationship that we all want, don't always have, but we want, is really what makes life worth living. And we can have that in friendships, we can have that in, with our significant others, with our children. We can have that even with our employees or employers, if we're willing to go there. And so when we come in and speak with any client, whether it's corporate or a small business, you name it, that is always a prime subject that people gravitate towards. They reach out. It's like, okay, here's what we want you to talk about. How can we have a better community within our group? Well, it starts with relationships. How can we, have strong relationships within the workplace? Okay, let's talk about that. And that's really been probably the most significant area of impact. But not just because of speaking events. Justin kind of alluded to this earlier. We love the live aspect, not because we get to be on a stage or anything like that. It's because afterwards we get to have conversations one-on-one with so many people. And those kind of conversations, you get to see the impact right in front of you. But I would argue that they impact us just as, if not more significantly, because we see something in somebody else that we want to reflect the level of compassion or a level of just earnest desire to see someone else succeed, you name it. There's this constant reciprocity that exists in these relationships where we're constantly growing and learning from the people that we get to interact with. And it all points back to healthy relationships, loving people well.
Wow. Wow. Maria wants to know if we're gonna, these recorded sessions be distributed so we can watch them again. Lindsay, we put these on our website and on our Facebook page.
Well, Shaylin's the one that does that, but I think we do YouTube, and then Shaylin will share it on our Facebook page, and
then
I can take it to the group from there. But we've got a Facebook page, Camino for Good Facebook page. Yeah.
And then Maria, it's also in that newsletter that comes out on Fridays. Just great comments down here saying how much we've enjoyed you guys. Thank you. I mean, I can't tell you how wonderful it is the way you share with us. Don't you guys agree with that? There
Yeah,
any
thanks, guys.
question down here that we've just got to answer?
I see
Yeah, does
one.
anybody have any?
I see. Are your families interested in doing the Camino with you? Our families are actually going with us next year on the Portuguese route. So our wives and kids will be there with us. And then my wife and I have plans in a few years, once our kids are a little older, to do the French way together, starting in St. Jean.
Mhm.
So that's the current plan with the families. What else we got here?
Anything else that
Looking. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't think so. I think we got it all. And unless we missed something, if we did, you want to throw it in the chat. We'll
Yeah.
go for it.
I mean, I did
Donna-
have a question about I'm a podcast audio producer, and I'm curious about the film crew and how you guys got connected with them and what it was like for them being documenters primarily instead of sort of helping push.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a two-part question. I'll answer the first half. Justin will answer the second half. How's that?
There you go.
We didn't actually plan on doing a film. That was never in the cards. It was just gonna be Justin and I going on this trip. But when you saw Ed in the film, my old boss, we get into this in more detail in the book, but the way the film came about, just the idea, was when I asked for time off, I mean, Justin had proposed the idea, and I was at a work barbecue where it was my boss and all the families and kids running around at this barbecue. And I see a guy rolling by in his manual wheelchair, and this kind of clicked when I'm like, you know what, there's never going to be the perfect time to do this. We just need to see if we can do it. And so I took my boss Ed aside and I asked him, I said, hey man, how can I get 6 weeks off next summer? And he's like, for what? Like, why in the world do you need 6 weeks off? But I explained to him Justin's idea, and he'd heard about Justin, but never met him. But he got really excited after this conversation, kind of thinking about the Camino, and his mind went into a completely different direction than Justin and I's minds were at. And he said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to do everything in my power to give you the 6 weeks off, but you got to promise me that you'll do everything in your power to document it on film. I was like, okay, why? And his response was, there's too much hope not to, what he said is, if you don't, you're selfish and you're irresponsible. There's too much hope not to share it. That was his quote, which kind of, I mean, Ed's blunt. He's a blunt man, but it just kind of kicked me in the gut. Like I had never even thought about that. So the next morning, Justice actually was in Italy at the time. And so I reached out to him on Skype. I'm like, hey man, I got time off for next summer, but we got to find a film crew. And so Justin took it from there.
Yeah. So once Patrick had the kind of buy-in and we knew that's the route we were going to take, I reached out to my buddy Terry Parrish, who's the co-director of the film. We went to college together, and over the course of 15 years or 20 years at that point, we kind of were keeping tabs on one another, but yet not really, haven't really chatted. But I knew he was co-owner or co-partner of a video agency based in San Diego, California. So I was living in San Diego for a long time. And so I just called him out of the blue. I was like, hey man, it's me. And we kind of caught up. He's like, hey, I have a project I want to talk with you about. Can we come in? Can I come in and talk with you? And I just came in with his team and I said, hey, I have this harebrained idea of doing this thing called the Camino. I'm in a wheelchair, and as you know, because I was in a chair at the time, and I'm gonna do it with my buddy Pat. Do you want to be a part of it? And it took him about 2 seconds to say, yeah, we do want to be a part of it. But that's one thing. Actually doing it is a whole nother thing. There's a whole story that happens between then and when we left.
Right.
In a very quick nutshell, we had a very grand idea of how to film it. We were going to do a live real-time documentary, which was going to be done in 5 episodes or 6 episodes, webisodes. That was going to be about a week delay, which had crews following us. And while we're doing it, they would, the next week they would go edit that previous week and then put it online, and just like this whole thing. The budget for that was $1.5 million just to film it. So there was this whole thing of like trying to get brands on board and this and that. And everyone said no, flat out said no, nope, 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 nope. And so we got to the point where we have these mile markers that we're trying to hit. And about 3 months prior, Terry calls me and Pat and says, hey, we're not nearly where we need to be from a monetary standpoint. Can you guys delay it a year? And we said, no. You either are coming with us or you're not. We had tickets at that point and said, you're either documenting this thing or not. And so he says, well, we can't do it. Okay. So Pat and I are just going to go do this thing. And so about, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, Pat calls again, or Terry calls again, says, Chris, his business partner, said, Chris and I talked and we want to come. And we need to find a crew, like bare bones crew in 6 weeks time. And we need to find somebody. So I said, all right. So they started going find somebody. Nobody could go. Imagine if somebody came to you and said, in a couple of weeks, I need you to be gone for a month and a half. It's just schedules and finding videographers. Crazy story. We ended up meeting Mike, our head videographer. And I'm kind of going into this a little bit, but it's kind of a cool story because the movie is a miracle. You're talking about miracles earlier. Like the movie is a miracle, flat out, period, 100%. So we end up meeting Mike, our head videographer, and we were introduced to him because he was the son of a woman that works at St. Luke's where Pat works. And on a whim, she said, my son's a videographer. Do you think you might want to be interested? And it was like, yeah. So we had talked to Mike, did a Zoom or a Skype interview with him and said, hey man, can you come with us? And he's like, yeah, I can come. So it was the 4 of us. When we left the United States borders, it was Patrick, me, Terry, and Mike, 4 of us. Mike is carrying 100 pounds of gear, not including his backpack or anything. This is just gear, camera gear, all that. And Terry was carrying. And so we get to Bayonne, France, because that's where we kind of planted it. And I'll never forget this meal. We're at dinner and Mike said, I cannot carry 100 pounds of gear. We're leaving in like a day and a half. 2 days, leaving in 2 days. Like literally walking the Camino in 2 days. We're in France. Mike said, it's either we pull the plug now or we need to get more bodies because there's no way I can carry gear. And so we're like, well, how much is that going to cost? And so, Terry was like, it's kind of do or die moment, right? And so Terry, thank God, got on the horn with his business partner and said, what kind of money do we have, whatever. And so they scraped together whatever they could. And Mike, I'll never forget this. He leaves the restaurant and he just starts getting on the phone, starts calling people, calling. And he calls Jasper, his buddy Jasper, who they kind of worked on a project together. So he kind of knew this guy, calls Jasper. Jasper is in Seattle on his way to Mount Hood to go skiing on the freeway. Mike calls him and says, can you be in Spain tomorrow for 6 weeks? And he goes, yeah, I can do that. He's like swings by REI, picks up some gear, hops on a plane. There'll be a ticket for you at SeaTac. Go in there. There's, somebody will be there, pick you up, take a taxi, whatever. He shows up at our doorstep the night before we start walking. Open the door, and Jasper is standing there, and we're like, "Hey, man," and we're like, "Hey, do you know why you're here?" And he goes, "Nope." Had no clue why he was there. We're like, okay, tomorrow we're walking the Camino. It's gonna be about 5 weeks. Blah 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 blah. He's like, all right, cool. I mean, and so he that was how Mike or Jasper got in the picture. Mike also got a hold of Robin, his friend Robin, who was another friend of his. He is French Bosnian, so he lives in Paris. And said, "Hey man, we need a car. Can you drive down from Paris and be with us for 6 weeks?" And he said, I can be down there. And so Robin shows up in Saint Jean the afternoon before we're about to leave. And I never forget this. He shows up, this little French guy shows up we're in a bar, I think, trying to find food or whatever. And Robin shows up and he says, "Are you Justine?" We're like, "Yeah." And he goes, I'm Robin, your driver." And we're like, "Oh, okay." Follow us. So our crew was literally assembled the night before we start walking this thing. And the ground rules for them was simple. Document it. You're not allowed to help. Simple as that. Document what happens and just follow us, and just whatever you can capture is whatever you can capture. And just make sure you try to do the best that you can. And we're going to, we'll do this together. We'll try to figure this out. And so I'll never forget that first day, because we're going up the Pyrenees and we are struggling because it is steep. And these guys, these camera guys they set down their cameras to help. Because when you see somebody in that situation, you just naturally want to jump in. And I mean, it wasn't pretty. And we had to stop. We were like, nope, you can't help. And as much as you want to, you can't. You just have to document it. With the only exception being, if I'm headed towards a cliff and imminent death is afoot, you may jump in and help. You can't just film me going off the edge of a cliff. Yeah, Pat, sorry.
Right. But I want to add, it's someone actually mentions it here in the book. I think it was Marcy. There was one point where they got to help out. It was actually Jasper, the second film guy. He had to leave early because he already had plans to meet someone up in Paris. So he missed out on the last day and a half of filming. So then it was just Robin and Mike. But our director wasn't around at that point, and he's like, "Hey guys, can I push for a little bit?" He's been wanting to push since the very beginning. We're like, it's flat, whatever, like, sure. So he jumps in, and he was so excited to push the chair. He's like, I've been waiting for this since I got here. Like, so there was that strong desire to help, but they just couldn't. We wanted it to be as it would have been if there was no film crew. And so we did our best to make that happen.
Yeah.
We're
Hey man,
gonna
you have the sun right behind your head, Pat. Can you move or relocate?
Sorry,
There you go.
I'll try and sit here.
Thanks so much. That was really fascinating.
So
Yeah,
we're
you
going to
bet.
have one more question. And is it Mariah or Maury? You raised your hand a while ago.
Moira.
Moira.
Moira. Moira.
Yeah.
Prost.
You raised your hand a while ago. Do you want a question for us that you want to add, that you're burnt? No, you're good. Okay. All right. Well, again, I want you to read yeah, Patrick.
Sorry. I did see one question that I think it would be actually to answer. Yvonne asked this: do you get tired, frustrated, or by perhaps having to answer the same question at each event? Actually, no, we don't, because we know that it's a new experience for everyone we're having a conversation with, and no Q&A is the same. There's been questions asked here today that we may have answered here and there in the past, but there's just a different kind of chemistry of questions and the people and how they respond. But I would say that we never get tired of it. And also the group that we enjoy questions from the most, nothing against anybody here, but as kids, because they're unfiltered, completely unfiltered. They will ask anything on their minds, and it leads to some of the most powerful dialogue you get to have. Like, for instance, we were in Redding, California, with a high school, and this kid, he's 17, 18.
Somewhere
No,
around there.
maybe 16.
It was
somewhere in
like
there.
16. Yeah.
Yeah, teenager. And the principal was awesome. He made the kids stand up and ask their question. You kind of get used to this kind of dynamic of where you're drawing attention to yourself. And so this kid stands up. He's, okay, I have 2 questions. And he looked at Justin. He said, my first question, Justin, is for you. He said, I want you to talk with me or tell me about just that level of trust that you put into Patrick. He said, and then he turned to me, he said, and Patrick, I want you to explain to me what that feels like to have someone trust you that much. And it was like, whoa, 16-year-old.
Deep question.
And that happens every time we're with youth. And so even though the questions might be the same one, we know that someone is walking away with a different perspective that's going to hopefully shape how they interact with people down the road. So it never gets tiring.
Yeah. Except for one time when we were with these elementary kids. And this is kind of funny. So kindergartners and first graders are a different beast, all together, all in one, whatever. And they kept asking like 20 questions about my wheelchair. So that I'm in a power wheelchair right now. So they would say, what's the joystick like? How do you turn it? What are the batteries like? How long do the batteries last? How do the wheels turn? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it was just so funny. And finally, I just got to the point and say, okay, no more questions about wheelchairs. All the teachers were like, oh, thank God. It was kind of funny.
If I may, I'm kind of derailing here a little bit, but that same day, I will never forget it. So then finally, some little girl raises her hand and she asked Justin to tell her about his disease. And he explains that, that I've had it for so long. It's kind of always with me now. Did a really great job of painting this picture for this little girl. And she says, so it's kind of like having a friend that's with you all the time, but you don't really like. Like, yeah, just like that.
It was kind of funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
Again, Patrick, Justin, thank you so much for what you've done with us and for being here today and answering our questions and everything. And all of you, thanks for coming. And please stay in touch.
We will.
Definitely. Thank you all so much for listening and for attending, spending time with us today. We are very, very blessed and honored to do so. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye, y'all.
Guys. Buen
Thank you.
camino.
Buen camino.
The Lord be with you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, folks. Bye.